Jangan. Bentar. Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dear Supervisor, Professor Muhammad Basri, Dr. Sahril, and examiners, Professor Haryanto, Sultan, who is still not online, and myself, and participants, ya, with us, Andi Nur Hikmah. Wah, ini ada hubungan dekatnya dengan Anugerah. Citra Prasiska, Ardianti, Nadia, Arham, Maya, Raida, Mulyati, Bau, Areski, and Umul. Nah, itu yang saya sempat lihat ya. Sorry for those that are not mentioned. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, Anugerah Febrian Syam is scheduled for seminar for his dissertation result. Yeah, or research result for dissertation. Yeah, and since I have two other activities, so which coincide with this seminar, so maybe I'll try to monitor at least, and later maybe hopefully can participate. Let's open this seminar by together reciting Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And this seminar is officially open. And to chair this seminar, I'd like to invite the main supervisor, the promoter, Professor Muhammad Basri, PhD.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Prof, for this chance. And Anugerah Febrian Sam is scheduled to present her the result of his study, and this will take 2 sessions, three sessions. First presentation from Anugerah, followed by the questions and comment from the audience, and then the exam. So since the examiners are already here around, we have Pastor Jamu, the co-promoter, Dr. Tari Lahu, we have Prof. Haryanto as well, and waiting for Pak Sultan coming in. And time for Anugerah to present the result of your study.
Thank you, Prof.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Professor Basri, for the time given to me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Recording in progress.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. The Honorable, the committee, Professor Muhammad Basri, Pak Dr. Sahril, the Honorable, the examiners, Professor Haryanto, Professor Basok Jabu, and also Pak Dr. Sultan. At this time, allow me to present my research seminar of my study entitled Intercultural Communicative Competence Development of EFL Students in Indonesian Higher Education. The reason why I deliver this study based on several excuses. The first one is because the need to prepare graduates in higher education who are able to address global challenges, acting in an integrated world system, and to resolve intercultural conflicts. The second reason is because the development of intercultural communicative competence in higher education assumes a crucial significance, because as we know that it is the ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in various cultural contexts. The role of culture and intercultural communication in AFL social context has not been well acknowledged in higher education institutions.
Ada dulu, ini ada itu yang berdekatan itu komputernya, jadi saling mempengaruhi.
Ya, Prof.
Jarak-jarak, ambil jarak.
Ya, sudah, Prof. Thank you, Prof. The last reason, because when we talk about other culture, it doesn't mean that those who speak a language that is different from ours or who live in a different country. It also means that those who live in the same city or region but who do not share the same social groups. From this background, I finally formulate several, the main theoretical research question, that is, how are the intercultural communicative competence development of Indonesian EFL higher education students? From these theoretical research questions, I then divided into 6 specific questions. Started with how are the intercultural competence development of students at home context, and then university context, community context, and then the next step is to answer the question of how do the students' families perceive intercultural communicative competence at home context. Lecturers perceive intercultural communicative competence at university context, and then finally end it with the perception of students' community members on intercultural communicative competence at community context. From these research questions, it can be identified that the objectives is to explore the development of EFL students' intercultural communicative competence in 3 contexts. And from the specific questions, I also can specify it into 2 research objectives. The first one is to highlight the students' intercultural communicative competence at home, university, and community context, the 3 contexts. And then the second one is to find some insights on the perception of the students' families, lecturers, and community members on ICC. When we talk about intercultural communicative competence, Byron seemed to be the very first to introduce this term. He stated that ICC is the attitudes, knowledge, skills, and complemented by the values one holds because of one's belonging to a number of social groups. In 1999, 2 years after Byron's statement, Chen and Stratosta stated that ICC is the ability to effectively and appropriately execute communication behaviors that negotiate each other's cultural identity or identities in a culturally diverse environment. In 2001, Weisman also stated that ICC is comprised of knowledge, skills, and motivation needed to interact effectively and appropriately with persons from different cultures. Furthermore, Derdorf in 2006 also stated that the ability to develop targeted knowledge, skills, and attitudes that lead to feasible behavior and communication that are both effective and appropriate in intercultural interactions is also known as the definition of intercultural communicative competence. Baker in 2011 also stated that ICC is one approach to systematically conceptualizing and investigating the knowledge, attitudes, and behavior associated with the successful intercultural communication. Now, from this definition, I finally found that there are three main topics if we are dealing with intercultural communicative competence. Those parts are namely constituent elements in ICC. They are attitudes, knowledge, skills. Next, this is the main the model that I followed in my study. It is from Derdorf's. He called it pyramid model of intercultural competence. It starts with the personal level that consists of knowledge and comprehension, skills, and attitudes. And then from this personal level, Derdorf's then realized that the essential, not the successful of individual in dealing with intercultural communicative competence is when that individual can move to interpersonal or interactive level, which is consists of desired internal outcome and desired external outcome. The design of my study, because the focus of my study is the behaviors and interaction of the students with the lecturers, families, and community members in terms of the EFL students' participation, as well as the beliefs and practices among interactors. It is suitable with what Jacob brings by introducing holistic ethnographer, because Jacob believes that holistic ethnography is the exploration and description of the culture of higher education institution by looking at its beliefs and practices. The participant of my study is 4 participants. They are students from 4th and 6th semester student. When I started my study, they consist of 2 males and 2 females. And then these participants are from those who live with their families and actively involved in English and non-English community or organization. I conduct my study started in February 2020 and then finish it in February 2021. The tools that I use in my study, because this is an ethnographic study, then the main tool that I use here is participant observation. And then after that, I triangulated it with interview model and archival model. Technique of data analysis that I use here is from Robert and Savera in 2000. Those techniques are coding for descriptive label, sorting for patterns, identifying outliers, generalizing construct and theories, and memoing with reflective remarks. Now, finally, we come to the findings of my study. The first research question deals with students' intercultural communicative competence at home context. There are 7 issues or 7 categories that I found in answering this question. Those categories include mindful listening, openness to other people's attitudes and withholding judgment, tolerance for differences or curiosity, ability, invitational rhetoric and the ability to gather appropriate communication, valuing other culture and its relation to religious practices, mindful reflexivity and acceptance and the interconnectedness between local language and cultural identity in family. These categories are included in 3 constituent elements proposed by Derdorf when dealing with intercultural communicative competence. I finally found that there are 2 knowledge elements here, 3 attitude elements, and 2 skill elements. Dealing with the individual differences in this category, it seems that Hannah performed her interaction mostly when dealing with attitudes element, while Paul seemed to have to focus on certain interaction when dealing with knowledge element. Then Irene here, Irene is also my student. Irene performs skill element in her interaction in home context. The four students were identified to be focused on certain topics that differentiate them each other according to the way they interact at home. Next question is students' intercultural communicative competence at university context. In this context, there are 8 categories that I found during following my students' interaction. They are flexibility to facilitate communication, dealing with misunderstanding, showing intentionality or directedness of consciousness, flexibility and stress tolerance, seeking clarity, professional commitment, perceived appropriateness and effectiveness, and dealing with empathy. There are two, it is found that there are only 2 students here who practice intercultural interaction in university context. They are Raymond and Irene, and it seems that Irene and Raymond perform similar orientation with what they perform in the home context, because here Irene outperformed skill elements in her interaction with her lectures and her friends in a university context during online learning, while Raymond seemed to perform attitude components similar with what he performed previously in home context. And I would like to explain that the effect of full online implementation during distance learning model used by lectures may explain the disappearance of Hannah and Paul in this class interaction and the minimization of knowledge element in university interaction. So from this finding, I can identify that Raymond and Irene in 2 contexts outperform certain elements of ICC. For example, in Raymond, he performed attitude component, while Irene seemed to only focus on skill element when interact with their friends and the lecturers. The next question is community context. There are 8 topics here. They are cultural awareness, understanding and knowledge of context, reaction to ambiguity, intolerance, bias of interpretation, judgmental reaction, affective component and continuous participation in community, ability to accommodate behavior, and collective self-esteem. It seems that in this community, verified the behavior of Hannah and of Raymond and Irene, because in this community they also perform similar elements of ICC regarding the elements that they perform in home and also in university context. It also found that Paul here also perform his interaction similarly with his interaction in home context. So from these results in community context, university context, and home context, it seems that every students perform every specific elements in their interaction when dealing with intercultural communicative competence. Hannah and Ramon seem to portray attitude component, while Irene portrayed skill component. And the last is Paul, is also portrayed knowledge component of ICC. Research question number 4, family perceptions. There are 5 issues or dimension of ICC that I explore here when asking the perception about intercultural communicative competence. For example, in the first dimension, when I ask about cultural elements that impact effective communication within family, they have different point of view when dealing with this question. And it seems that, and I can, I then make some categories about their perception dealing with this question. For example, in Iron family, her family focused on politeness as the cultural element that in fact effective communication in the family, while Paul family focused on the role of local language. Raymond family focused on the harmony. The next question is about key aspect for effective communication in family. It seems that there are different point of view here. They are communicated intimately, communicate honestly and openly, and also create mutual understanding as the key aspects for effective communication in family. While tradition and values becomes the main perception of the family when it is related to understanding culture in home context. And how to prefer family in intercultural communication context, there are 2 points here. They are knowledge about the world and other cultures and attitudes of openness, respect for people from different cultural background, and global mindedness. And the last, related to cultural identity and family communication, I found 2 styles based on the perception of 4 students' families. Those styles are socio orientation and concept orientation. When dealing with lecturer perception, there are 7 here dimensions of ICC. In knowledge of culture and how to deal in university, lecturers believe that there are 2 main points here. They are it's based on the life experience of the lecturer, and it is based on the character of the lecturer and when dealing with the culture in the university. The second, when we deal with teaching culture in a foreign language class, lecturers believe that it is based on the student's real life and the attitude component. The third point, when we deal with cultural elements that in fact effective communication in foreign language class, the lecturers perceive that it is based on how we convey opinions and how we maintain communication. The next dimension, key aspects in effective communication, is dealing with understand whom you speak with, understand where you speak, and understand ways you use to speak. The next dimension, causes of misunderstanding in the class interaction. There are 3 causes here based on the lecture's few points. The first one is cultural differences. The second one is inaccurate expression, including lack of appropriate word choices. And then the last one, the mismatch of verbal and non-verbal language. Incorporating cultural contents in language teaching class is divided into 3 based on the into two based on the lecturer's perception. The first one is the content of big C and the little c culture. The next one is the concept of third class concept. And then the last dimension in university context based on the lecturer perception, dealing with how to prepare students to communicate in intercultural context. It seems that there are 3 points here. They are creating authentic environment, raising intercultural knowledge, and dealing with cultural stereotypes based on the lecturer's perception. The last question is about the community perceptions in dealing with intercultural communicative competence in community context. There are 5 dimensions here. The first dimension is cultural elements that in fact effective communication in community. there are two viewpoints from the community, from the community. The first is the message content, or what is said, and the second one is the relationship, or how it is said. The next dimension is key aspect for effective intercultural communication in community. There are 3 points here: open-mindedness, self-awareness in dynamic communication, and appropriate nonverbal communication. The next dimension is misunderstanding triggers in community. This is so related with speaker, interlocutor, and those related to the interaction between the participants. The fourth dimension is addressing intercultural aspect in community. It consists of language usage and tolerance based on the lecture's viewpoints. And then the last dimension, based on the community members' perception, is how to prepare community members to communicate in intercultural context. It is found that there are 3 viewpoints. The first one is the role of self-knowledge. The second one, role of self-claim. And then the last one is recognition. Now, from these findings, based on the 6 research questions that I delivered in my study, I finally proposed a model based on the findings that I delivered in this study. This model consists of 3 types, and I call it Interactive Model of Intercultural Communicative Competence, or IMICC. The type of interaction found in this study is knowledgeable interaction, attitudinal interaction, and skillful interaction. Knowledgeable interaction is a type of intercultural communicative competence carried out by EFL students that emphasizes the element of knowledge as the dominant portrait among the 3 contexts. Attitudinal interaction emphasizes attitudes as a dominant portrait among the 3 contexts of interaction, while the last one, skillful interaction, it is a type of intercultural communicative competence carried out by EFL students that emphasizes the element of skills as a dominant portrait among the 3 contexts. These types of interaction can be identified as IMICC. The projection of this model can be seen here. So there are bound line. I call it bound line. In the inside bound line, it seems that it shows knowledgeable interaction because it portrays knowledge elements in 3 contexts, while in the middle bound line, it portrays skillful interaction because the students perform skill elements of ICC in all 3 contexts, and the outline it comes to the attitudinal interaction, because the student mainly perform attitudes in all 3 contexts. To summarize this model, IMICC indicates that EFL students' communicative competence tend to have the same pattern wherever they interact. In this model, these patterns comprise knowledgeable interaction as the dominant usage of knowledge elements in ICC among 3 contexts or 3 interactions: attitudinal interaction, attitude elements in 3 contexts, and skillful interaction, which is the dominant usage of skill elements in intercultural communicative competence among the 3 contexts. Thank you very much for the attention. I think that this model will sum up my presentation today. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Now, time for the participants to give comment or questions. Please, silakan. Siapa nih? Dari partisipan yang mau bertanya, silakan. Go ahead.
Tapi saya, Prof.
Ada atau tidak ada?
Saya, Prof. Maya Masita, Prof.
Oke, silakan Maya.
Oke, thank you, Prof. Pak Anugrah, can you explain to us what's the novelty of your research? Thank you.
Oke, silakan.
Langsung, Prof.
Ya, langsung saja.
Okay, so my study actually is very related with the model from Derdorf in 2006. She actually introduced a pyramid model of ICC, and in her model, it seems that he explored about the personal level of ICC that focuses on 3 elements. They are attitude, knowledge, and skill. From Derdorf's model, we cannot see that because ICC is actually, the definition of ICC is actually to be able to communicate in various contexts. In Derdorf's models, it seems that the model only focuses on no specific context of interaction. He focuses on the individual achievement, while in my study I focuses on the way that the individual portray their competence in intercultural interaction from their students of life perspective, from home, from the university, and then from the community. And then in the study, I finally found that every student seems to portray similar elements wherever they interact. For example, my students Raymond portray only attitude elements when they interact in university, when they interact at home, and when they interact at a community. The other students also portray specific elements that is become their identity wherever they interact. And from that findings, I finally project my model into by combining 3 contexts and then connect the results of my students characteristic into IM and ICC model. So there are three characteristics of the students when dealing with intercultural communicative competence in 3 contexts. They are knowledgeable interaction, they are knowledgeable interaction, skillful interaction, and attitudinal interaction.
Thank you for your explanation. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, any more questions?
Me, Prof.
Man, silakan. Ya, siapa tu? Okay, langsung.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Hardianti. My question is related to your research question or your finding on research question number 5 related to the lecturer's perception. What is actually the terms that you put there? What does the big C and little c refer for? I mean, what are they? Because it seems very new for me. Yeah, about big C and little c, related to the incorporating cultural contents in language teaching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Silakan.
It is not something new actually, because little c and big C is already familiar when dealing with cross-cultural or intercultural communication. Here, big C actually is a characteristic of the educated middle class, and it is in fact the result of the study of. So when we deal with the big C culture, it means that the lecturer perceived that the culture consists of the concept. Yeah, you know, something like the culture dealing with the literature, the culture dealing with the museum, the culture dealing with the historical events, and something like that. While a little C culture, it deals with personal level. It deals with when we deal with culture, it means we deal about attitude. When we deal about culture, it means we deal about values. When we deal about culture, we deal about respect. So that is the difference between big C culture and little C cultures. And that is not something new actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.